Alright. Let's see what we've got. That's a classic one. Oh yeah. Yeah, this book was great. Then
Season's greetings.
whoa, what are you even doing here? I thought we took care of this last year.
Actually up for a performance review?
Alright. We talked about the comic book, you can leave now.
Yeah, I mean, that was great, but I'm not going.
You said you wanted me to talk about Christmas comics, and I did. 4 times, in fact, for you.
I was sent to make sure you felt the Christmas spirit, and the best way I could figure out how to do that was to go ahead and, talk about comic books like you'd like to.
I 100% agree with you. I haven't been feeling very holly. I haven't been feeling very jolly. And that's because everywhere I go, there's something outside of my control leeching my time, leeching my energy from me.
Now hold on a minute, let's not be too hasty.
I said go! No, we can't. Not this year. Frick. Are you kidding me? Again? Let's get this fixed. Let's see here. That's it? Strange. That was a breaker problem again. Wonder what that was all about. What in the world? Okay. All right. One more time. We'll do this one more time. Hey everybody, and welcome back to Comic Crush, my little show on the internet where we talk about comic books and stuff. I've wanted to talk about these particular comics from today for a while. These books are easily my favorite Christmas books that I get to read every single year. It's a Superman Santa hat. How fun is that? It's a Super Santa hat. Because you see, in 1991, the Superman team that was writing all of the Superman books at the time, they had like this huge team that was doing like a new book every single week. It was a huge undertaking at the time, and even still that would be ginormous. They came up with a Christmas story that was so good that it ended up getting repeated, or at least re-referenced, several times, 3 times, and now we have 4 stories that all kind of use a similar gimmick, and together these 4 issues kind of make up like a secret mini-series within the Superman comics called Metropolis Mailbag. The gimmick of these books is that Superman is a very, very, very famous person, and part of being a very, very, very famous person is that you're going to get a lot of fan mail. And these books are that. It's Superman responding to his fan mail around Christmas time. And all this wholesome and merriment begins with Superman number 64. The story for Superman 64 is legendary and has been told all across the internet over and over and over and over. See, what happens in this is Lex Luthor decides to throw Lois Lane, Jimmy Olsen, and Emil Hamilton into this weird digital dimension. And he's all like, hey Superman, if you want to save your friends, you gotta solve my puzzles. And so throws Superman into the digital realm as well. And the only way he can possibly save his friends is by flying through rings with poor flight controls. Obviously, that's not the story of this. It's just, someone was going to make that joke, and I did. No, in actuality, our story happens in Superman issue number 64. Just a fun coincidence. Now, our story here today begins like so many Superman stories begin, where Superman is flying up through Metropolis, through the sky, just kind of leisurely going along, and he's kind of being a bit of a downer over it until he lands at the Metropolis post office. When he gets there, the postmaster is there, as well as Lois Lane. Lois Lane is there to help cover a story. And the whole reason they're all gathered here together at the post office is that every single year, Metropolis just gets tons and tons and tons of letters from all across the world for Superman. And it's revealed that every single year, Superman goes through all of his fan mail on Christmas or roundabouts Christmas and just tries to respond to some of it. Incredible! I had no idea. Where does it all come from? Everywhere. From every nook and cranny in the world. Letters from men, women, kids, letters in English, French, Russian, Swahili, hundreds of thousands of them. As they're going through these letters, Lois points out that Superman does seem a little bit melancholic about the whole thing. And he's like, it's because there's a lot of letters here that are either something I really can't help with or something that I'm just unable to help with. Every single one of these letters is asking Superman to do something. Dear Superman, I'm writing to you from Alaska with a terrific business proposition. If you would assist me in my search for undiscovered oil, our success would make us both very wealthy men. Don't they realize you'd never do something like that? Don't they understand what Superman is all about? Makes you wonder, doesn't it? But then every once in a while, he does get something that he can work with. Like this one. Dear Superman, I do hate to trouble you with my worries, but I am a 65-year-old survivor of Auschwitz. For years, I thought my entire family had perished there. Because of that, I had no reason to look for anyone and wanted only to put the terrors of Germany behind me, but I recently discovered that I had a sister who also survived and now lives in what used to be East Germany. For the first time in almost 40 years, I know I'm not the last of my family. All I want is to see her again, but I haven't the means. You see, I'm a widow living on a fixed income in Chicago. Normally I wouldn't ask for help, but my sister now resides in a nursing home and I fear she's not long for this world. Sincerely yours, Mrs. Agnes Schromer. We cut to Chicago and Mrs. Schromer is just hanging out in her house. She's talking to her cat and it kind of wistfully thinks about like how different life could be when a knock comes at the door. She opens the door and I love this line. Shouldn't even answer the door if... Hello, Mrs. Schromer. I'm Superman. Yes, you are. Like, it's funny because like that would be the polite thing, and it's definitely in character for Superman to answer the door and be like, hello, my name's Superman, it's nice to meet you. Who else would you be? And turns out Superman was able to make some contacts with some of his friends in the US Embassy over in Germany, and he flew Mrs. Schromer over to Germany to meet with her sister. This is why I do this to myself. Every now and then it is good to be a Superman. After he reunites his sister, Superman flies back to Metropolis, and they keep reading letters, and this is kind of where we learned a little bit more about why this is so hard. Is because amongst the selfish business propositions that he inevitably gets, he also gets a lot of selfless requests that are things he just can't really do anything about. He pulls up one letter, and it's proof of that. This woman is asking for a heart transplant. That's not something Superman can do. He can't just make that happen. And that's the same with this letter that he gets next. Superman opens up this letter and it's from a young boy. I don't think this letter will ever reach you, but my mom told me to try anyway. My dad has a brain tumor. The doctors say they can't do anything to save him, but you can, right? And since you're so awesome, I know you will come and save my dad's life. Love, Terry Baldwin Jr., age 10. Now, this letter, of course, eats up Superman inside, and he says that, like, he can't do anything about that. He can't perform a brain operation like this. But he feels like he does need to respond to this. He needs to go and comfort this kid. So Superman flies off to Salt Lake City, where the letter came from, and goes to the hospital and asks where Terry Baldwin's room is. And turns out he got there just moments too late. He was declared dead 10 minutes ago. The wife and the son, the one son who wrote the letter, they meet up with Superman and they're just grieving. And the son's like, how come you didn't get here in time? How come you didn't save my dad? I thought you were Superman. You could do anything. And Superman says, no, that's not the thing. I'm not Superman. I'm Superman. I can't do everything. All I can do is the best that I can. It's kind of a sad moment where we see that, like, Superman is really helpless in this moment, and it's kind of painful to see. During the middle of their conversation, a nurse shows up and asks the wife about whether or not her husband was an organ donor and what she wants to do about that. And she says that she doesn't want to donate his organs, but Superman does ask, look, earlier today, I got a letter for someone who needs a heart transplant. And I know this is a really, really hard time, a really hard subject, but you could be doing a lot of good if you would make this happen, if you would make this sacrifice. And now, somewhere in Kansas City, a woman gets to live because a family in Salt Lake City with hearts filled with grief still found enough room to give. Lois has been looking at these letters all night and has found one more that she thinks Superman can help with. You see, every single year, the local orphanage has a bit of a Christmas party where they hand out gifts and such, but because of funding cuts, they can't do that this year. And their request is that Superman show up and talk with the kids, and hopefully that'll distract them from the fact that there aren't any presents this year. Superman reads this letter and says, you know what, actually, I got a much better idea. Superman flies off to Star Labs to meet with his scientist friend Emil Hamilton and explains his plan that he doesn't just want to give these kids a visit from Superman. That's a thing that could happen at any time. This is Christmas. He wants to do something really special. So he gives a set of blueprints to Emil, and he's like, actually, yeah, this is something I can do. I can make this really quickly. Let me get to work. What are you going to do about toys, though? And so Superman hops on the phone, and over in Gotham City, Alfred picks it up and is like, hello? What in the... Bruce, we got a phone call for you. Tell them I'm busy, because I'm brooding, and I'm sad, and I'm Batman. I would, but he says he's Superman. Yes. Actually, yes, I would be delighted to help. I'll call the department store in Metropolis and tell them to send me the bill. And then he hangs up the phone, and Superman's like, that was easy. That was really easy. We got presents. Emil says, cool. You got the presents, I built the sleigh, I got the Santa costume, but I don't know how we're going to make it fly. According to the legend, it's reindeer. And Superman thinks about it for a second, and he found what the finishing touch needs to be. He goes over to the Metropolis Zoo and borrows a couple of reindeer and also puts on like a black mesh suit. Lois goes back to the Daily Planet and finds all of the orphans in the orphanage and says, okay, everybody, we got to get to the roof of the Daily Planet. Something really special is going to happen. And when they get up there, they are greeted by Santa Claus flying a sleigh pulled by reindeer with a bag full of toys in the back. The mesh suit was so that Superman could hide a little bit in the darkness, and if he goes fast enough, nobody will notice him. Superman drops Emil dressed as Santa off on the roof, and he starts handing out toys, and that's when Superman quietly goes around the corner and just flies away. Looks like my idea worked better than I could have hoped. Tonight, it's better for these kids to believe in the magic of Santa than the abilities of Superman. I'll pick Emil up later. He's having the time of his life. And I wonder how that heart transplant went. I'll have to check in the morning. And here we see Superman just kind of fly off into the night sky, just appreciating the fact that he's able to do what he can. And it's so great and so wholesome and it's so uplifting, and I love this book so much. It's one of my favorite Superman comics from this era, and needless to say, my favorite Christmas comic. Now, when I was collecting all of the comics for this video, which that was a journey and a half to make happen, I'll tell you about it later. When I was going to collect all of the issues that I needed for this video, this one was the easiest, and it's probably the most read. Because as evidenced by the cover, this is part of the Funeral for a Friend storyline, which was right after the death of Superman, right before he came back. So, the most successful comic book storyline of all time is going on, and this is right in the middle of it. This sold so many copies. When I found it in the box, there were just like dozens of copies of this specific issue, going for like 12 cents a piece. So it's likely that if you've read any of them, it's probably this one. Basically, the premise of this one, of Metropolis Mailbag 2, is that all of the superheroes of the Justice League are meeting together as kind of a last-time effort to really honor Superman's life and legacy. This is about a week after they've held the funeral. And the way they decided to do that is to carry on Superman's annual tradition, as brought up in Metropolis Mailbag 1, the year prior, to respond to Superman's fan mail and try to help some people out, try to do a few good deeds in the name of Christmas. Now, while that's happening, the big significant B-plot of this book is Mitch. Now, Mitch is interesting because he was a huge part of the Superman franchise for just a tiny little bit, but he was incredibly important. During the death of Superman story arc, when he's fighting Doomsday, there's actually a point in the story where Superman gets the upper hand. Superman is really close to winning the fight and just ending the threat before it even made it to Metropolis, before it even got to any kind of major populated place. Problem is, though, Mitch and his family, they live kind of out in the boonies, and Doomsday crashed through Mitch's house while Mitch's family was inside of it. And during the fight, when this happens, Superman gives up the advantage that he had on Doomsday and turns around and saves Mitch and his mom and his baby sister. Now, Mitch recognized just like how big of a move that was, that Superman would give up that advantage in that fight, and he blames himself for Superman's death. But this is one of those times where the story is very centered on him. He's made a pilgrimage to Metropolis, and his whole goal is he's trying to find somebody who knew Superman so that he can apologize to them. So the Justice League start divvying up letters, and they all start, finding various people to help and whatever else. And a lot of it comes to a head when it comes to Mitch. Wonder Woman pulls up a letter, and this letter actually comes from Mitch's mom. She talks about how she's very thankful for Superman for saving her family. She wrote this letter immediately after he left, and then she mailed it. So that was great. But she wrote this letter saying, hey, the insurance company won't fix the house, but I'm so thankful that you stopped to save us and save my family, and I just wanted to write this letter to say thank you for that. So they kind of split up and get to work. The Flash takes a team and they go over to Mitch's mom's and starts helping to rebuild the house. And then we have Wonder Woman, who just kicks down the door to Mitch's dad and says, hey, your wife, she can't pay for the house and you kind of abandoned them, and that's not an okay thing, and I'm going to make you turn around and fix this. And he's like, oh, okay, yeah, okay, let's go. Meanwhile, in Metropolis, Mitch, their son, is working with Jimmy Olsen and Bibbo, and they're hanging out together and trying to help Mitch get over his survivor's guilt from the whole event. And eventually he goes home. And he's going to get to go home to a family that is now together and a house that now works. They have family and shelter, and they have it in time for Christmas, and that's great. This book is really heartwarming, but like I mentioned, it works best as a continuation of the death and return of Superman, and the Metropolis Mailbag gimmick of answering Superman's fan mail is a bit weaker in this one than it is in the others we're going to look at, mostly because there's just so many other plot lines happening right here. We have to devote pages to Lois Lane's struggle and her conversations with Jonathan and Martha Kent. We have to devote lots of pages to the other sci-fi plots that are happening here. There's a plot at the very end of this where some bad guys are trying to kidnap Superman's body for science. We have to deal with Jimmy rethinking his career. There's a lot happening around this book that makes it so that this book doesn't feel as focused as I think it probably could. Though I do like that overall, it all does come back to Mitch and his family. And like I said, this is a very, 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 very easy book to find. If you paid 50 cents for it, you've overpaid. This is easy to get. It's been reprinted in everywhere that the Death and Return of Superman story has been reprinted. And it's an interesting continuation of the Metropolis Mailbag concept, and proves that it does have staying power. We do want to see superheroes go out there and just do good things. And this is a great format in which to do it. And even though it's a gimmick that clearly had a lot of staying power, we were pretty sure they were done with this kind of story for quite a while. Because this one is from 92, the one prior to that was 91 I should say, 91 and 92. And they didn't do one for 93. Which made us feel like, okay, maybe they're just done with it. But then 2001 came, and we got it again in a book that doesn't make it obvious. 2001 was, of course, a really, really big year for a lot of different reasons. In the real world, there was a lot that happened at the tail end of 2001 that made Christmas feel a little bit different. A little bit bigger, but at the same time a little bit more somber. In the DC universe, they couldn't possibly have predicted that, because comic books are about 8 months ahead of real time. But what we did get was oddly coincidental and oddly appropriate. So where did it go? In 2001, the story that was really, really big was Our Worlds at War. There it is. So Our Worlds at War was this big DC Comics event where a villain named Imperiex was headed towards Earth and was just destroying everything in its path. And the superheroes had to make some very sketchy alliances, some very shaky alliances, and there were a lot of casualties, there was a lot of destruction, and it was all purely coincidence that it lined up with a year that felt very much the same in the real world. And that's where we get Superman number 177, this one titled Metropolis Mailbag, because it's the 2000s, we gotta get into the modern world already. The purpose of this one is that Superman, in an effort to try and help people recover and bounce back from the Our Worlds at War event, is he wants to just do his Christmas tradition, but he wants it to be a really, really public thing. Just kind of show that, like, people are still out there, there is still hope, there are still good things that are happening. Now, but before Superman can really get around to answering his emails, he hears that there's a giant robot. Metallo has turned into a huge building-sized robot and is just causing all kinds of destruction in Metropolis. And he's being fought back by a bunch of tiny Superman toys. What? How did we get here? Superman flies into Metropolis. It's not hard to find Metallo, and he starts fighting him, but he just can't fight back against this giant kryptonite-powered robot. And he turns around, and now there's another giant robot that looks straight out of like some kind of Power Ranger spinoff. And Superman's like, what in the world? What? How is this a 2 giant robot day? So he picks up a wrecking ball by the chain and just swings it into Metallo, sending him flying into the bay. And then he does the same to the other robot, and now we have 2 giant robots who are fighting in the middle of the ocean. And Superman says, okay, cool. Well, that'll buy me a little bit of time. Let's answer some emails. And so he responds to a couple of emails. The first one we get is from Father Alejandro Pacheco. Now, Father Pacheco, during the Our Worlds at War event, they're going to keep going back to that. During that event, their church was demolished. And it's been hurting the faith of the local population. And he asks if Superman can show up and help put the finishing touches on it so that they can ring the bells for Christmas, as has always been the tradition. And so Superman does that. He flies in, he fixes the building. His powers have been greatly augmented from the other 2 Metropolis Mailbag stories. So he's able to do this. He's able to work a lot faster. Fix the church, puts the bell in, rings the bell, and then he hears, hold on, there is a bunch of giant robot shenanigans happening. And he flies off to deal with that. Now, he gets back to this trench that is in the middle of the ocean, and this trench comes from like something that was happening with the Aquaman books, where Atlantis has been destroyed or disappeared and it's just not there. And so now there's just like this gaping hole in the ocean where there's all of these walls of water everywhere, and that's where he finds the robots. And they're fighting, and now there's a giant fish that has joined the battle. And the Superman looks at this and is like, this is the weirdest day I've ever had. And he picks up the fish monster and throws the fish monster away into a different point in the ocean, because the fish has no stake in this. You know, it's just acting on instinct. It's just confused why these things are in its home. So Superman relocates it. And then he says, hey, you know, I relocated the fish. The fish is no longer in danger. The robots are just going to go at it. I can answer another email. And so he does. He actually answers a few. You get to see him just travel the world super quickly and get a lot of stuff done. And then he returns back to the giant robot fight, and now there's a giant knockoff Pikachu thing that's joined in it. And Superman, the same scenario. The weird Pikachu monster doesn't have any stake in this. So he relocates the Pikachu, sends it back into the ground where it burrowed from, and then now it's time to fight the giant robots. Superman does a super dive into the water and grabs one of Metallo's legs and starts dragging him underwater. Okay, Metallo, you gotta talk to me. Why are you back? Why are you a giant robot monster? And Metallo says, something weird happened with all the new technology we got from the Our Worlds at War event that I keep bringing up and keep saying Our Worlds at War event, like, it's starting to sound silly to me too. All the weird technology we got from that mixed with the special metal that made me who I am, and now I can't control it. And the reason why I'm fighting this guy is because he's the new toy man, and he claims that he owns the metal that makes up my body, and we're not going to have that. And so Superman picks him up and says, okay, first it's back to Strikers, the prison in Metropolis. Then I'll have some of my friends take a look at you. What's the catch? No catch. It's called helping someone. Try it sometime, okay? He takes Metallo back to jail, and then he returns back to the trench where the robots were fighting and sees that the other robot is still there. It's like, I thought you would have been long gone by now. What's up with that? He rips the head off of the robot and looks inside, and it's like some kid. It's like some 12-year-old operating this huge robot, and he sets it to self-destruct. We get one last email. This is an email from Caleb. Superman takes the robot toy from Emil and he flies over to this quiet neighborhood, this quiet house in a quiet neighborhood where Caleb is, and gives the toy to Caleb. Caleb lost his parents in the Worlds at War, and Superman has been checking in on him, trying to help him personally to get past that grief and past that trauma that he experienced there. And Caleb makes a point to point out that for some reason Superman switched all the yellow and the S shield with black, and it's like, what does that mean? Sometimes folks wear something black to remember people they've lost. Like my mom and dad? Yes, Caleb, just like that. Maybe if you can find one, I'd like a shirt like that too. I'll see what I can do about that. So, this one, I think, has a lot of the same problems that the Funeral for a Friend edition had, where it was kind of overcomplicated and there was a lot of stuff going on. If you don't know about Our Worlds at War, then this book doesn't make nearly as much sense, just because so much of it is tied up with that story. That, and the whole thing really isn't all that Christmassy. There's very few Christmas iconography throughout it, so it kind of feels just like a regular book. But it does fall in line with the other two. So that's the thing. Also, I do find it a lot more fun than the Funeral for a Friend one, just because all of the distracting bits in this one are Superman fighting giant robots. That's fun! So yeah, we get to see a lot more super feats of kindness and compassion, and that's great. And then we get to see him fight robots, and that's great too. Yeah. This was cool. So this book, this was fairly simple to find overall. It's just that you wouldn't know to look for it without knowing what the cover would look like, because this is a very nondescript cover. This is not very Christmassy. It doesn't imply that it's going to be part of any kind of Christmas tradition, but it is. It's just that you have to know about it. But this one was fairly simple to find, and as far as we're all concerned, the first one, Superman number 64, was pretty simple to find. Like, it took a little bit of digging, but it happened. And then Superman number 76 was, again, so easy to find. It wasn't a thing at all. This one was, about as hard to find as Superman number 64 was. The one that was giving me a ton of trouble, though, I just could not find it out in the wild at all, because it's just such a weird niche book and you wouldn't expect to find it, was this one. DCU Infinite Holiday Special number 1, released February 07 is the cover date, which means that was released December of 06. This one is very different because this isn't just a dedicated Superman book. This is a whole book dedicated to just Christmas stories and holiday stories based on all kinds of DC Comics characters. We have one for Green Lantern, we have one for Shadow Pact, so we go pretty niche with this one. We got Trials of Shazam and The Flash, and we've got Batwoman, and we've got the mini Superman Batman team-up story. But the one we're interested in is the Supergirl story titled All I Want for Christmas. Now folks, this might be my favorite story of the bunch, okay? Because there's so much that goes on here, and it's definitely the most emotionally heartfelt of the 4 stories that we've gotten so far. A little bit of context real quick. This comes out in 2006. What happens relatively soon prior to this is the Superman Batman story Apocalypse. The second story arc in this, though, is incredibly important for understanding where the Supergirl story is coming from. The version of Supergirl that we all think of hadn't been in comic books for about 20 years. And they figured it was time to retell her origin in the modern setting and bring her back. And that's what that story was. Now, the reason why I bring this particular story up before talking about that one is it explains where Supergirl is coming from emotionally. She's a lot more angsty than she's ever been before. And behind all of that angst was really just a sad teenage girl who just doesn't understand the world that she's in. And she's putting in all kinds of effort to be angsty and kind of a pain in the butt, and to try and prove a point. And that's where we open up this book. Superman and Supergirl are hanging out at the Kent farm, and Supergirl's being a little stinker. I don't get it. It's a religion thing, right? Yes, it's a major holiday in the Christian faiths. Even though many scholars agree that Jesus' actual birthday probably wasn't in December at all, and Santa Claus isn't in the Bible. You're just messing with me now, aren't you? A little. Not really, I don't get it. Put aside the trappings of the day for a second, and let's focus on the spirit of Christmas. I thought spirits were for Halloween. Okay, I'll stop now. Christmas is about love, hope, charity. Yeah, that's all the store windows are pimping. 30% off charity. Buy love, get hope free. Maybe they would if someone had to read all of these. And they open up the barn, and inside is this huge, huge bag full of letters for Superman. We're going to teach you what the spirit of Christmas is about, and to do that, you're going to help me answer my fan mail. And Supergirl's like, are you kidding me? And she starts reading these, and it's like a bunch of people asking for business propositions. They're like, hey, how about you squish coal into diamonds? Or how about you help me find the lost city of gold in the Amazon jungle, or whatever. And very much harkening back to that first story. And Superman's like, well, yeah, ignore those ones. Focus on the ones that you can help with. Focus on what you can do. And so we see Supergirl do a few super feats, answering some mail. She delivers some presents, she fixes up houses, she visits hospitals. Then she comes across one very, very poorly written letter. Dear Superman, and she has like a little sketch of Superman, and it's really bad. My daddy is a brave soldier in Iraq. I miss him. I would like to see him even just an hour. And so Supergirl arrives, and she sees that this little girl is making a snowman who's, I think is actually supposed to be a soldier. He kind of looks like one. There's an American flag in there. I think she's building her dad as a snowman. And so Supergirl shows up and says, hi, Brooke. How are you doing? So, I'm Supergirl. Nice to meet you. And Brooke freaks out and runs into her house. And Supergirl's like, well, okay, she's a little girl. I guess that makes sense. And she knocks on the door, and Brooke's mom shows up. And she says, look, I can get you to go see her father. I can work it out with the military. I can organize a brief visit. And the mom gets really upset and really kind of miffed at Supergirl for suggesting such a thing and slams the door in her face. Supergirl flies off to the Batcave. It's neat. So she just shows up in the Batcave, and she's working on the computer to try and find out where Brooke's dad is stationed and what's going on there so she can get some answers, because she's bothered that she's trying to do something nice and reunite this dad with this family, and now she's being told not to, and she's an angsty teenager. She's not going to let that go. She does some research and finds that he's not a soldier, and he's not at Iraq. He's just drunk. And he's just at some bar somewhere. Supergirl finds him in the street and says, look, you abandoned your daughter, Brooke. And she just wants to see you for Christmas. You've been lying to her about where you've been this whole time. I want answers. And the dad says, look, it's because I'm kind of a screw up and I make bad choices. So I didn't want her to be around me, and how about you just go tell Brooke that I'm dead? That would be the most helpful thing you could do. Supergirl flies back to Brooke's house, eats some of Santa's cookies, which, reminder, Santa does exist in the DC universe, so she's stealing Santa's cookies. But she's eating some of Santa's cookies and trying to debate, what do I even say to this little girl? Oh, have you heard about landmines before? Or like, nothing makes sense to her. And she doesn't understand why this would happen, especially like she's remembering her last moments on Krypton when her dad put her in the rocket ship and sent her off, and all she wants is 15 more seconds with her dad, and she won't get that. So why would any dad abandon their kid this way? And so Supergirl is just done. She's done with all of this nonsense. And she zooms over to the dad's house, picks him up, and holds him up 29,000 feet above the ground. Anyway, about the tell her that I'm dead bit, I think it's a great idea. There's just one problem, though. I'm not allowed to lie. It's an S thing. Okay, good. I'm glad you understand. And then she lets go of him, and he just starts plummeting and falling. And It's like, it's like, oh, Supergirl. Wow. Of course it's fine. She caught him. You know the cliche, Fred. Everyone does. When you're about to die, your life flashes in front of your eyes. But I've been there, and it's crap, isn't it? You do see something. You see the holes, the missing bits, and all of the things that would have made your life complete. If you had one more day, a year, a second. I don't know what you saw, Fred, but considering you were in freefall for a solid minute, I bet it was an eyeful. Maybe you're a screw-up, a loser, a drunk, but maybe the piece you're missing can make you something better. But only if you go to her and try. Merry Christmas, Fred. Hope it's a good one. And then she flies off and she reports back to Superman. Yeah, so I did the thing. It was pretty good. I feel pretty good. I think I understand how Christmas works now. So, sweet. Let's go have pie. So they go off to have pie. And then we get one last look at Brooke's dad showing up at Brooke's home. And they share an embrace. I like this one a lot. It really takes the themes of that first one. Takes the themes of this first one and really expounds on them. Really amplifies the messaging that this had. We get all of the super feats. We get the same messaging that that first one had, and it's executed so well. I think this book does a lot of good stuff. And I'm really happy that I was able to eventually find it. I had to end up ordering it online just because it was that impossible to find. If I were to go ahead and rank them based off of favorites and start tier listing these, I would say the Supergirl one from DC Universe Infinite Holiday Special is my favorite of the bunch, followed by the original one, Superman number 64. I think they just really nailed it very well the first time and gave it enough room to be expanded. Then the one with the giant robots in it, because along with it still having some Christmassy goodness, I got to see Superman fight some giant robots, and that's always fun. And then I would follow that one up with Funeral for a Friend. So even though it's really easy for me to tier list these 4 books, I still would recommend all of them. I still think these make a really solid, like almost hidden mini-series within the Superman books, because they all carry that same tone of, you know, it doesn't matter what you are able to do. What matters is that you do what you can, and that you do your best to help others. And you know, it's a great message of both what I think the thesis of Superman is and the thesis of Christmas. No, hold on.
AA Psychic, we expected your call. How can we align the stars for you today?
Oh, you guys are still in business.
I said, how can we align the stars for you today?
Sorry, I was hoping that you would be able to send a message for me.
Who is this going to?
It's going to a ghost. It's a Christmas variant type ghost.
Messages to the undead are a premium service and cost 37 cents per word. You may begin.
37 cents per word? Isn't that a little much?
Your current total is $3.70.
That wasn't the message. Can we start over?
$7.77.
Okay, I get it. Hey, Christmas ghost, I got your gift and, well, it was very thoughtful of you. You know, my life hasn't quite gone in the direction I always imagined it being, and it seems like everything else is a little unknown and scary around the end of the year. Lately, it's felt like the Christmas season is just sandwiched between the load of the previous year and the daunting challenge of the next, but I think I've learned that it's not so much as about that as much as doing the best that you can. The thing all of these books have in common was that the holiday miracle wasn't so much the result of things we can't explain, but the work of people, heroes in their own world, doing the best they can to make the best of what they had. You've taught me a valuable lesson, and I'll never forget that. And I can't thank you enough. Please, forgive me for the harsh words I said to you, and please know that you have my gratitude, and if you ever wanted to return, I'd be more than happy to see you again. You came back.
I never really left. It's Ghost 101. Ghosts leave when they get what they want. And what I wanted was for you to feel better. You took your sweet time, but I can see you're in a much better place now.
So, I have a lot more comics in the Christmas box. You wouldn't happen to want to... Ooh. Actually, let's do that later.
Later?
Yeah, I'm actually headed out the door right now to meet up with family for the holidays. But let's catch up later, right?
It's sure thing. Mission accomplished.
$92.87.
Put my action figures back. These things are... You know, I really should rethink this, that I put all the action figures in front of the comics, because it makes it hard to reach the comics. But it looks so good, you know, and it's so thematically appropriate that I have all the Superman figures in front of the Superman books. But I want to read the books. It's a struggle. First world comic nerd problems.